Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, distinguished guests, dear members and friends of the World Economic Forum. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the World Economic Forum's engagement in India, providing an appropriate opportunity to reflect on the progress this country has made. Of course, Indian business leaders were participating already in the 70s at our annual meeting in Davos, but it was in 1984 when the late Rajiv Gandhi came to Davos, visited our headquarters, accompanied by an important delegation of political and business leaders. He invited the forum to create a platform through which we could show the world that India was ready to move out of years of isolation towards a trajectory of modernization. You, Your Excellency, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, have spearheaded, first in your former capacity as Finance Minister, now as Prime Minister, the reforms which unleashed the full capacities of India's productive potential, as well as enormous entrepreneurial energy and creativity. India has come a long way since 1984 to become one of the world's fastest growing economies. The theme of this year's summit is India's next generation of growth. The choice of the theme means that during the next 2.5 days, we do not want to look back, but we want to develop a roadmap for the future. We now have to turn our attention to those challenges which really have to be addressed as we design the next generation of growth. It is clear that the issues such as inclusive growth, poverty eradication, climate change, resource security, soft and hard infrastructure will be the key factors for future development. You, Prime Minister, have clearly recognized this new landscape, and we highly appreciate your presence here at our 25th anniversary to share with us India's agenda of conclusive growth, which is so dear to your heart. Over 600 participants from many countries around the world are listening to you. Political, business, but also civil society leaders, young leaders, women leaders, social entrepreneurs. This multi-stakeholder presence and commitment reflected in your presence here is the base for the way forward. This summit is not only a demonstration of the power of public-private partnership, but also a good example of the great cooperation between the World Economic Forum and the Confederation of Indian Industry. I would like to thank the President of CII, Venu, Srinivasan, its Vice President, Mr. Bhartia, and the Director General, Mr. Banerjee, for this long-standing, excellent cooperation and friendship. Few nations have the growth potential that India already enjoys. The amalgam of democratic tradition, of cultural diversity, professional skills, entrepreneurial zest, and now also its global engagement. Those are just some of the attributes which hold the promise of a most successful future. The motto for the World Economic Forum since its beginning has been entrepreneurship in the global public interest. We believe that entrepreneurship drives social and economic progress. But this motto, this entrepreneurship, always has to serve the public interest. And I think this motto is really the motto which should be at the base of India's way into a bright future. Thank you, and welcome, please, the Prime Minister.
Professor Klaus, Schwab, Shri Venu, Srinivasan, captains of industry from India and from abroad, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this highly prestigious event being hosted jointly by the World Economic Forum and the Confederation of Indian Industry. I compliment both these organizations for making the Indian Economic Summit a regular, exciting annual feature of our landscape. This summit, as Professor Schwab has mentioned, is in some ways very special. It is the 25th anniversary of the first Indian Economic Summit in 1985, which was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister of India, Shri Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv ji, on that occasion, outlined the vision of India as a rapidly growing, dynamic, and modern economy, breaking free of the shackles of persistent poverty, hunger, and disease. I am happy to say that we have delivered substantially on that promise, but the task is by no means unfinished. India's growth has accelerated from 5.6% in the 1980s to an average of nearly 9% in the 5-year period preceding the global financial crisis. We are today a more open economy, open to both trade and investment, and integrating successfully with the world at large. We've also been seeing substantial progress in reduction of persistent hunger, poverty, and disease, though, as I said a moment ago, this is an area where much more needs to be done. Our strategy today is not just to deliver rapid growth, but to deliver rapid and inclusive growth, a growth that will provide productive employment to our young population and raise living standards in rural areas across the length and breadth of our vast country. The integration of the Indian economy with the rest of the world has undoubtedly created new opportunities, but it has also brought before us new challenges. These were amply demonstrated by the global financial crisis which exploded last year. That crisis has disrupted economies everywhere in the world. It has been a very stressful period around the world, and fortunately, the major economies of the world have responded in a reasonably coordinated manner. We have avoided a collapse on the scale of the Great Depression of the 1930s. Clearly, the worst is behind us. Though the path to sustained global recovery will be long and presently somewhat uncertain. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say that India has been able to face the global economic downturn better than most other countries in the world. The Indian economy grew at a respectable rate of 6.7% in the year 2008-9. In the current financial year, we also faced the adverse impact of an inadequate monsoon and the resultant slowdown in our agricultural economy. Nevertheless, growth is expected to be around 6.5%. There are clearly signs of an upturn in the economy. With a normal monsoon next year, we hope to achieve a growth rate of over 7%. This performance in highly adverse circumstances indicates the resilience of our economy. It also vindicates to a large extent the corrective action taken by our government to manage the downturn. Like other countries, we resorted to a significant stimulus, and we will take appropriate action next year to wind this down. Our medium-term objective continues to achieve a growth rate of 8 to 9% per annum, taking into account the fact that our domestic savings rate is now as high as 35% of our GDP. This is eminently a feasible target. Of course, a return to high growth rate requires work in many directions. World demand will pick up, but probably only slowly. Our strategy, therefore, must aim at sustaining a high rate of growth on the strength of strong domestic demand. We seek to achieve this through a large increase in investment in infrastructure. The development of high-quality infrastructure is an essential requirement to fulfill India's ability and capability of rapid growth. We have an ambitious program of investment in all the key infrastructure sectors: power, roads, ports, airports, telecommunications, irrigation, and urban infrastructure. Some of this investment will be through the public sector. However, private investment has a large and growing role to play in achieving our target. In many areas, we are following a strategy of private-public partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, to fulfill our commitment of achieving inclusive growth, we will also have to expand government expenditure in critical key social sectors, especially health and education, including skill upgradation of workforce on a massive scale. Environmental sustainability is also an important objective and one that has gained significance in the context of concern about climate change. We have prepared a national action plan on climate change outlining our response in this critical area, focusing on increased energy efficiency and greater use of clean energy technologies, including solar energy. Special attention will have to be paid to prevent degradation of our scarce land and water resources. As foreign investors, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to participate in all our efforts. Our foreign direct investment policy has been greatly liberalized. Foreign direct investment has been freely allowed in more and more areas under the automatic route and now covers a number of sectors in agro-processing, nearly all areas of industry, and also services. I'm happy to say that as a result of these measures, the accumulation of foreign direct investment inflows amount to over $120 billion since the financial year 2001-2. This is not a large enough number given the scale of our economy. In recent years, India has been listed as among the most attractive locations for foreign direct investment. In addition to foreign direct investment, we welcome portfolio investments in equity in Indian companies by qualified institutional investors. Our policy will be guided by the desire to make India even more attractive for foreign direct investment. We are particularly keen to rationalize and simplify procedures so as to create an investor-friendly environment. In pursuance of our commitment to develop greater people ownership of public undertakings, our cabinet has recently decided on the criteria on which such companies will qualify for disinvestment. We now hope to see faster progress in sale of a portion of government shareholding in the domestic market, an issue of fresh equities in respect of the selected companies in the public sector. Though the global financial crisis did not affect Indian banks or our financial market directly, it drew attention to the need to strengthen our financial system in various ways. We need to ensure that our financial system can provide the finance needed for our development, and especially for infrastructure development. This opens up a broad agenda for reform. We need to develop long-term debt markets and to deepen corporate bond markets. This, in turn, calls for a strong insurance and pension subsectors. Some of the reforms needed, especially in insurance, involve legislative changes. We have taken initiatives in this area and will strive to build the political consensus needed for these legislative actions to be completed. We need to improve futures market for better price discovery and regulation. We also need to remove institutional hurdles to facilitate better intermediation. All these issues will be addressed through gradual but steady progress in financial sector reforms to make this sector more competitive while ensuring an efficient regulatory and oversight system. Ladies and gentlemen, India looks to the future with confidence and with hope. We are confident of meeting the domestic and international challenges to fast and inclusive growth. We are also better placed than any time in the recent past to push the reform process forward. I believe we have a bright future if we make use of our well-known strengths and the opportunities that lie ahead. In the coming months and years, I hope to see a decisive change in the pace of our progress to become a leading economy in the world. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, let me end by wishing your summit the very best. I am sure that you will have vigorous and intense discussions on a range of contemporary issues relating to the functioning of the Indian economy and how our system's reform process can be accelerated. I also hope that, like always, your deliberations will bring into sharper focus the direction that India's economic policy should take. I look forward to your deliberations with great expectation, and I thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, I think after your speech, we all look forward to India's further development with what you said, hope and self-confidence. I'm very grateful that you agreed to answer 2 or 3 questions, and I have to say I have difficulties to formulate questions after having listened to you. But nevertheless, Prime Minister, you have formulated, if I'm not mistaken, 18 different programs in order to achieve inclusive growth. What is closest to your heart in this whole area of inclusive growth? Well, what do you feel most passionate about?
Well, of all the program areas, the closest to my heart are education and the health sector. We should have done a lot more in both these areas. We were late comers in this process, and it is my sincere hope that in the next couple of years, we can raise public sector involvement and investment in education to 6% of our GDP, that public sector involvement in health sector can go up from about 1.2% to 2 to 2.5%. So these are the 2 most critical areas which have a bearing on our capacity and on our ability to achieve the objective of a truly inclusive growth.
You have mentioned the National Action Plan to address climate change. Now we have, in some weeks, the conference of Copenhagen coming up. What would you expect from the global community in this respect? And will India take on any kind of leadership role in this respect?
Well, climate change is a reality. It is today a global problem. We are as much affected, in some ways more affected than some other countries. So we have an obligation to work with all like-minded countries to ensure a purposeful response to the climate change. In anticipation of the Copenhagen conference, we have put in place a national action plan which has 8 key missions to improve our response mechanisms in meeting the challenge of climate change. And we will work with all like-minded countries to promote a purposeful, positive outcome of the Copenhagen conference. But I would say that although all of us are affected by climate change, the historic accumulation of CO2 is not as a result of anything that we have done. It is largely a consequence of 150 years of industrialization in the major developed countries of the world, and therefore, in recognition of common but differentiated capabilities, it is our hope that while all countries will be required to contribute according to their capacities and abilities, the world's major economies will be prepared to create an environment in which larger capital flows become available for mitigation, for adaptation measures, and also that a technology regime is put in place where the developing countries of the world would have access to these technologies at affordable cost.
Prime Minister, you have spoken recently often about leadership. And my question would be, how do you create the preconditions for better governance, not only on the national, but also on the local and on the state level?
Well, only a few days ago, in addressing a conference in this very room, I stated that the need for reform in processes of governance at the central level is widely recognized, and we will grapple with the challenges that lie in that area. But there is inadequate appreciation of the need to reform the processes of governance at the state level, also at the level of local bodies. Our local bodies today do not have adequate resources or administrative capabilities to meet the challenge of local level development. So this is the major concern that we have, that while the national economy, the national processes of governance become more transparent, become more accountable to the public at large, equal attention must also be paid to improvement of processes of governance at the state level and at the local body level.
One very last question, Prime Minister. You and your government guarantee the political stability of this country, but your country is living in a neighborhood which is not necessarily characterized by political stability. How do you cope with this situation?
Well, we need a neighborhood in which peace, progress, and stability can be ensured. And it's, I think, an understatement of the year to say that these conditions do not prevail. We are very worried about the rise of terrorism in our neighborhood, particularly what is going on in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. We have a vital stake in peace, progress, and stability of these countries and other countries of South Asia. But I do expect that the international community would also recognize we are the victim of terrorism, unfortunately, coming from across our borders. For the last 25 years, the world may have discovered terrorism as a global problem after 9/11, but we have lived with that for a much longer period. And I sincerely hope that among the processes which require sustained international cooperation dealing with terrorism will figure very high on the priorities of all civilized countries of the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, Professor Schwab, my colleagues on the dais, global industry leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, first may we say that we are most grateful to you to be here at the 25th edition of the World Economic Forum India Summit. You have been, sir, the pioneer of liberalization in India, and today, if India has been well integrated with the global economy, we owe a lot to you. The next major challenge for us in this country is how do we convert this recent spurt in the last 20 years of economic prosperity to include all people of this country. Added to that, we have the challenges that you have outlined on global environment change, pandemics, and many other issues where the global equilibrium is changing rapidly. Sir, the Indian industry, the Indian people have reposed great confidence in you, and we, in the next 5 years, look forward to a major leap in India in economic activity, in infrastructure, in education, and in health. Sir, all we can say from industry is we will be with you fully in your program for inclusive growth and bringing prosperity to every corner of our country. Once again, sir, thank you very much for being with us today.